The void ruptured above Hydra's prime, a raw gash in the firmament spilling a crimson radiance that drowned the stars. Across the planet, billions stared upward as a burning shape tore free of that cosmic wound, a blazing ember streaking downward like a vengeful comet. Imperial Vox relays burst with static-laced alarm, while orbital defense bastions swung their gunmetal spines to bear, targeting matrices locking with lethal precision. The Planetary Defense Force, heirs to generations hardened by ceaseless Xenos incursions, surged into motion with mechanical discipline. From his palace balcony, Governor Talius raised magnoculars, eyes narrowing as he tracked the descending enigma. Its trajectory slowed, corrected, no drifting wreckage, no random celestial event, but a thing possessed of mind and will. "My lord," murmured his seneschal, voice thin with dread. The astropaths detect violent warp unrest. Something breaches the veil. Talius's jaw tightened. "Signal the Astra Militarum garrison. Initiate spire evacuations, and send word to..." His command faltered as he caught sight of the intruder, now hovering above the skyline, suspended without engines or repulsor fields. A towering man-shape, cloaked in cobalt armor and a crimson cape that writhed despite windless air. Upon the stranger's breast gleamed an emblem alien to any imperial sigil Talius had ever recorded. Then the voice came, resonant and vast, needing no vox to carry. "Your world stands on the brink of ruin. I am Callel. I come to aid you." Almost on cue, the orbital auger arrays shrieked fresh warnings. A Xenos fleet had pierced real space at the system's edge, Tyranids. The vanguard of a Tyranid hive fleet pierced the void, its first probing tendrils striking Imperial lines with dreadful intent. Deep within the governor's fortified command bunker, tactical hololiths sputtered and flared, flooding the chamber with the cold light of incoming threat data. Xenos bioships advanced in precise formation, driven by eldritch propulsion no Imperial savant could fathom. From their chitin-armored hulls, swarms of voidcraft spilled like living shrapnel, while mycetic spores ignited the upper air, plunging toward hive clusters and agrarian zones alike. "Projected civilian losses?" Governor Talius demanded, his tone unnervingly even as catastrophe unfolded in real time. The chief tactician, scarred veteran of 3 brutal campaigns, did not waver. "Conservative estimate, 30 million souls in the opening hours, my lord. Outlying farmlands will fall almost immediately." Another hololithic rune pulsed crimson. "Hive cities themselves, days at most unless our fleet can seize void dominance." Talius's gaze hardened. "And the stranger?" The displays answered for him. Sensor feeds flared with sudden movement, a streak of cobalt and scarlet slashing across the heavens. Callel. He descended upon the spore wave like a judgment-given flesh, each strike erupting the biological pods before their infectious broods could reach the ground. In the thin air above, he wrought devastation with surgical calm. Eyes lancing heat so fierce it vaporized Tyranid skiffs and seed pods in mid-flight. Where his fists found the larger clusters, explosions blossomed spectacularly, reducing what should have been ravenous tides of genestealers and gaunts to drifting, harmless organic dust. Governor Talius stood wordless, awed and grim, as the enigmatic warrior achieved alone what would normally demand an entire Imperial Navy battle group. When the last spore cluster disintegrated, the stranger descended, touching the palace's marble flags with inhuman poise. "Your world is momentarily secure," the figure declared, his voice a deep bell of authority softened by something the governor had rarely known across decades of Imperial command. "Compassion. But more will come. I can help you fortify." Talius's gaze swept over the being, outwardly humanoid, yet unmistakably beyond human. Too flawless in form, too immense in strength. Within the Imperium, such perfection invited suspicion of Xenos trickery or warp-born taint. His hand tightened on the grip of his ceremonial bolt pistol. "What are you?" he demanded, eyes hard. "Speak truth, for the Emperor's light burns deceit to ash." The stranger inclined his head. "I am Kel, last son of Krypton. My world perished long ago in a distant plane of existence. I was sent here by forces I barely comprehend, yet my calling endures. To shield life, to confront the darkness." Tullius drew breath to answer, but the chamber quaked violently. Through the armored viewports, the heavens blackened once more. Not with nightfall, but with the vast silhouette of a colossal Tyranid bioship descending into low orbit. This was no probing detachment, but the vanguard of full invasion. "Emperor, guard us," the seneschal whispered, voice thin with dread. Kel's eyes hardened like molten steel. "I must depart. Your people need me now." "Wait," Tullius called as the stranger crouched to leap skyward. "The Imperium has strict protocols for such crises. The proper authorities must be informed. The Inquisition will demand to question you." A faint, knowing smile touched the flawless face. There is no time for bureaucracy when lives hang in the balance. And with a thunderous rush of displaced air, he vanished into the heavens. Tactical hololiths flared alive as operators struggled to track his impossible speed while he smashed headlong into the vanguard of the renewed assault. 3 days later, the impossible had become fact. The primary Tyranid offensive lay in ruin. Imperial Navy reinforcements translated into the system to find void lanes eerily empty of Xenos craft. Their vast bioships reduced to drifting, frozen carcasses. On the ground, scattered Tyranid broods writhed in confusion, severed from the hive mind that once bound them. In the governor's great hall, the aftermath drew emissaries of power from across the Imperium. Admirals of the Navy, grim-faced commissars of the Astra Militarum, and a delegation of the Adeptus Mechanicus, compelled by reports of the entity's staggering capabilities. "This being wields force beyond any recorded human threshold," intoned Magos Tekch, his augmented eyes whirring as they refocused. "Its speed eclipses Warhawk pattern interceptors. Its durability outstrips even Astarte's physiology. Such a phenomenon demands exhaustive study." "Study!" the fleet commander barked. "It deserves commendation. 3 hive ships annihilated, millions of lives preserved. Whatever it may be, it fights for mankind." From the chamber's shadow came a colder voice. "That assertion remains unproven." The gathered dignitaries pivoted as a tall, lean silhouette glided into the hall, clad in the unmistakable raiment of the Inquisition. Inquisitor Cardinal Virine advanced with the quiet menace of a hunting predator, her face half-veiled behind an elaborate mask of gold and ceramite. "Nothing stands above the Emperor," she pronounced, each word edged with unshakable command. "Not in might, not in righteousness, not in the devotion owed by Imperial subjects. This entity, whatever its genesis, is a profound, blasphemous risk." "With respect, Inquisitor," Governor Tullius interposed, his voice steady yet charged. "It saved my world when our own forces could not. It demands no tribute. It seems to embody the Emperor's ideals of guardianship and self-sacrifice." Virine's augmetic eyes contracted to icy slits. "Heresy is born from such gentle reasoning, Governor. The road to damnation is paved with justifications that sound benign." The chamber fell into a taut silence, until a sudden shift of air drew every gaze upward. From the open balcony descended Callel himself. the flawless symmetry of his form rendered even more striking by smears of soil and the black-green ichor of slain Tyranids. "Forgive my intrusion," he said, his voice carrying calm urgency. But civilians remain trapped in the eastern agricultural sectors. The xenoforms have entrenched a central nest there. I have been dismantling their infestation district by district. Yet, coordinated Imperial support could preserve countless additional lives. Inquisitor Virine advanced a measured step, her gauntleted hand hovering near the holstered bolt pistol. "Identify yourself, Anomaly. By the mandate of the God Emperor's Holy Inquisition, you will submit to questioning and examination." Callel met her with unflinching calm. "I honor your authority, Inquisitor. But people are dying even as we speak. I can hear their screams, thousands of them, children among them. Can your inquiry wait until they are safe?" Virine's reply was glacial. "Nothing outweighs the preservation of mankind's soul. The physical loss of a few thousand is insignificant beside the spiritual contagion a single unvetted being might unleash." For the first time, a spark of anger cut through Callel's composure. "Where I come from, every life carries equal worth. No throne, no creed, justifies turning from suffering." Virine's eyes gleamed with cold triumph. "Then you confess your alien nature. In the Imperium, sacrifice is the coin of survival. The strong must be ready to expend the weak for humanity's eternal endurance. Even the Emperor himself immolates countless lives each day to keep the Astronomicon alight. Your creed is not merely naive, it is perilous." Callel drew breath to answer, but the palace itself suddenly shuddered as klaxons wailed. Over the vox, the tactical officer's voice cracked with urgency. "Multiple warp signatures inbound, massive translation underway." The hololithic projector bloomed with fresh dread. Vast silhouettes clawing into real space. Hulls warped and bristling with unholy armaments after millennia in the immaterium. Virine's whisper carried the chill of recognition. The Blood Disciples. The Tyranids were only the opening act. This is a coordinated strike, Callel said, striding toward the balcony. "I'll intercept them." "Hold," Virine commanded sharply. "These are no witless Xenos. They are traitors to humanity itself, chaos-corrupted Astartes, whose ships crawl with warp-spawned blasphemy. They carry Chaos Space Marines, warriors reforged and defiled by the Immaterium's power. Their weapons can wound even one such as you." Callel paused, eyes narrowing. "You know what I am?" "Enough," Virine answered coldly, "to recognize the scale of the threat. If you truly mean to aid mankind, you will coordinate with Imperial Command. Not act alone." A breathless stillness stretched between them. Then Callel inclined his head once. "Tell me what I must know." The briefing that followed was brutal in its clarity. The Blood Disciples, an infamous warband sworn to Khorne, had likely been drawn by the psychic shockwaves of the dying Tyranid hive mind. Their intent was pure slaughter, to harvest skulls and drown worlds in blood, striking civilian centers to maximize terror and death. Their lord, Vorgath the Bloodbringer, Virine continued, fights encased in Terminator armor, saturated with warp sorcery. He wields an axe rumored to cleave the very fabric of reality. Do not underestimate him. Callel listened in grim silence, resolve hardening. I have faced beings of godlike might, monsters and deities alike, he said. Virine's reply cut like steel. Not like these, she warned. The Chaos Gods are unlike anything from your world, Virine said, her tone a razor of cold warning. They thrive on emotion and faith. Given time and weakness, They can corrupt even the most flawless heart. For the first time, a shadow of doubt touched Callel's perfect features. I have resisted attempts at mental domination before. This is no simple coercion of thought, Virain countered. This is the very perversion of existence, the twisting of physical law and moral truth. Your immense strength will mean nothing if your soul becomes a channel for their influence. Far above, aboard the lead warship of the Blood Disciples, Vorgath the Bloodbringer prowled his command deck with predatory anticipation. His hulking Terminator plate, encrusted with the skulls of slain Imperial heroes, exhaled steam and groaned as arcane systems flooded his genetically forged body with combat stimulants. The planet's defenses lie in chaos, rasped his lieutenant, a warp-twisted sorcerer whose Baroque armor pulsed with captive demons. The Tyranid incursion shattered their orbital strength. Resistance will be negligible. A deep, metallic laugh roared through Vorgath's Vox grill. Excellent. The blood god cares not from whence the blood spills, only that it flows without end. Ready the landing craft. I want boots on soil within the hour. My lord, the sorcerer interrupted. Our augurs mark an anomaly. Something races among our ships, something impossibly fast. Before Vorgath could answer, the flagship lurched under a thunderous impact, corrupted control panels flaring with frantic warning runes. External pict feeds flared to life, capturing a cobalt and crimson streak ripping through the chaos escort ships, bare hands shearing armored hulls like foil. Impossible, the sorcerer breathed. No mortal survives the void. No human wields such strength. Behind his skull-faced helm, Vorgath's eyes narrowed to burning slits. Not human, then. Something else. Something worthy of Khorne's gaze. The flagship lurched violently as its own super-reinforced plating buckled like thin parchment. In a thunder of riven metal, Callel burst into the command sanctum, the sundered bulkhead screaming behind him. Chaos Marines unleashed a storm of bolt rounds, but detonations sparked harmlessly across his invulnerable frame. Vorgath advanced, raising the great axe Soul Render, its warp-forged edge keening with unholy power. What manner of being dares confront Khorne's chosen? He thundered. Callel's eyes swept over the monstrous warrior, flesh warped by demonic gifts, armor scrawled with sigils of endless slaughter. I am Callel of Krypton, he said evenly, and I will not let you destroy this world. Vorgath answered with a roar, half battle cry, half dark invocation, charging forward as the axe cleaved the air where Callel had stood a heartbeat before. The Kryptonian moved faster than sight, driving a single colossal punch into the Chaos Lord's breastplate. Ceramite split with a deafening crack. Life support conduits and power couplings failed in a burst of sparks. Vorgath staggered, stunned that any unaugmented foe could deliver such force. But shock quickly turned to exultant fury. At last, a foe worthy of the blood god, he bellowed, lifting the rune-scorched axe once more. Blood for the blood god, skulls for the skull throne. This time, when Vorgath brought the massive axe down, Callel caught the warp-forged blade between his palms. For a heartbeat, the two stood locked, unyielding strength against demonic sorcery, Kryptonian might braced against a weapon birthed of the warp. Then the impossible happened. The edge began to bite. A thin, scarlet line traced itself across Callel's hand, and surprise flickered over his flawless face. Pain, an almost forgotten sensation, stabbed sharp and real. The Soul Render, empowered by ruinous gods, could pierce even his near-indestructible flesh. Vorgath exulted, driving the weapon closer to Callel's face. Your blood will make a worthy sacrifice, he snarled, "and your skull a tribute for the Skull Throne." With a sudden, explosive surge, Callel thrust back, his eyes igniting twin beams of incandescent heat. The searing rays struck Vorgath's helm, liquefying ancient ceramite and drawing a roar of rage and agony. The Chaos Lord lashed out in sweeping, frenzied arcs, while across the bridge his sorceress lieutenant began a guttural incantation. Warp-born energies thickened in the air, writhing toward Callel as spectral chains meant to bind not body but soul. He felt them clutch at his essence, a suffocating pressure of alien will. Summoning every reserve of power, he shattered the unseen fetters. But the brief distraction cost him. Vorgath's corrupted axe hacked forward again, raking across Callel's chest. The Kryptonian's storied suit, unmarred through endless battles across universes, split beneath the warp-charged edge, and bright crimson welled forth, startling in its brilliance against the deep blue of his garb. Sensing the peril, Callel shifted tactics. Instead of matching brute force with brute force, he unleashed speed beyond comprehension, his form a streak of blue and crimson too swift for even the gene-augmented senses of the Chaos Marines to follow. In mere heartbeats, the bridge crew lay disarmed, their weapons crushed to twisted scrap, and he stood once more before Vorgath. The Chaos Lord suddenly realized the Soul Render was no longer in his grasp. Callel held the corrupted axe aloft, the weapon writhing as though alive, its dark will straining against his grip. "Your gods hold no power over me," he said, though a shadow of doubt edged his voice. The wound across his chest burned with unearthly agony. The axe whispered insidious promises of glory and dominion, each word a temptation drawn from the warp itself. With a visible surge of will, Callel snapped the weapon across his knee. The sound that followed was not the simple crack of sundered metal, but a shriek of rage that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Lights guttered and flared. Blood welled from the eyes of mortal crewmen, streaking their faces like crimson tears. Vorgath only laughed, the noise warped by his damaged helm. "Fool," he growled, voice thick with triumph. "You cannot destroy what belongs to the Blood God. You have merely loosed its essence." The shattered fragments of Soul Render vaporized into a swirling crimson mist that filled the bridge, and where the burning haze touched exposed flesh, it seared like acid, consuming the hapless crew in agonized dissolution. The Chaos Marines dropped to their knees in awed submission as the crimson mist thickened and took shape, rising into a towering half-corporeal horror. A demon of Khorne stood revealed, its monstrous frame an obscene fusion of rippling muscle, brass plating, and ceaselessly flowing blood. Enormous horns arced from its beast skull, and in taloned fists it hefted an axe far greater than the Soul Render Callel had destroyed. "Blood!" it thundered, the single word a concussion of sound that made mortal ears bleed. "Skulls!" Callel braced himself as the nightmare fixed eyes of molten hate upon him. "I've faced demons before," he declared, though an undertone of doubt betrayed him. This was unlike any extra-dimensional foe of his native reality. Something fundamentally wrong, an insult to the very structure of nature. The demon swung its titanic axe in a blur of brass and gore. Callel slipped aside and countered with a strike powerful enough to topple mountains, his fist sinking into the creature's chest and scattering its form like smoke, only for it to knit together instantly. "Your strength feeds Khorne," the monster exulted, its voice a roar of savage delight. "Your fury makes him stronger." A cold realization gripped Callel. Brute force and strategy were futile. This was no mere physical adversary, but the living embodiment of slaughter, an idea given flesh through the warped physics of the immaterium. The demon pressed on, each sweep of its colossal weapon rending not just air, but reality itself. Callel dodged most of the horrific blows, yet every glancing strike sent shocks of impossible agony through his impervious frame. This was no mere physical wound, but an assault upon Callel's very essence. As he battled on, an alien murmur crept into his mind, swelling with every clash of steel and fury. The voice was smooth and poisonous, offering strength beyond reckoning if only he would embrace the creed of Khorne. "Do you not fight for justice?" it hissed. "Is not Khorne the god of martial honor as well as bloodshed?" For an instant, Callel faltered, the insidious reasoning threading itself through his thoughts. Seizing the moment, the demon's colossal axe struck full across his chest, hurling him through layer after layer of armored bulkheads. He lay amid the twisted wreckage, crimson life spilling from wounds that defied all Kryptonian limits. The monstrous figure advanced, stooping to squeeze through the ragged breach. "Yield," it commanded, a single word that carried the chill of eternity. "Serve." A colder, darker whisper slid through Callel's mind. Perhaps this universe, merciless and savage, rendered his lifelong morality obsolete. Perhaps dominion and raw power were the only absolutes. His dimming vision caught the emblem on his torn suit, the ancient Kryptonian glyph mistaken by humans as an S. To his people, it meant hope. Strength stirred within him. Gritting against the agony, Callel forced himself upright. "No," he said, the word clear and final. "I reject your god and everything he represents." The demon bellowed in thwarted fury, lifting its reality-rending axe high for a killing stroke. Before the killing blow could fall, a new sound swept through the tainted warship. A hymn at once pure and terrible, each note a blade of holy fire. The demon shrieked, its roar cracking the air as the Sisters of Battle stormed aboard, their chants to the God Emperor slicing through warp corruption like cleansing flame. At their head strode Inquisitor Virine, brandishing a staff crowned with a blazing golden aquila. "Creature of the warp," she intoned, her voice a litany of judgment. "By the Emperor's light, I banish thee." The towering abomination wavered. Its monstrous form tugged between the material realm and the immaterium. It resisted, hatred coalescing on the Inquisitor as it fought the inexorable pull. Callel seized the fleeting chance. Summoning every last reserve, he lunged forward, not to strike, but to seize the demon's very essence. In a burst of blue and crimson light, he rocketed upward, dragging the writhing horror through the shattered hull and into the void. Faster and farther he drove them, air ionizing to a ghostly glow as he pushed beyond the system's gravity well, beyond the reach of mortal faith and bloody devotion that had birthed it. In the endless cold between stars, the creature's shape began to unravel, thrashing in silent fury as belief and emotion slipped from its grasp. Piece by piece, it dissolved back into the immaterium until only darkness remained. Callel felt the sinister whispers in his mind ebb to nothing, but the wounds on his body still bled, sluggish and stubborn, refusing to heal even in the vacuum where Kryptonian flesh should have already knit whole. The warp's corruption had sunk deeper into Callel than he first grasped. With the last scraps of strength, he turned toward Hydra's prime, a half-conscious missile plunging through the black void and burning atmosphere. When awareness returned, it was to the sound of low, mechanical chanting. He lay in the Medicae bay of an Imperial cruiser, while robed tech priests moved with ritual precision, adjusting arcane instruments grafted to his body. Servitors jabbed crude metal needles into his veins, pumping unknown fluids that somehow pierced skin once thought impenetrable. The corruption spread slowly, a tech priest intoned without inflection. but it advances nonetheless. At the foot of the bed stood Inquisitor Virain, her golden mask betraying nothing. "You cannot remain, Callel of Krypton," she said, voice cool and final. "Your very existence disrupts the fragile theological balance of the Imperium." Despite the weakness that weighed on every muscle, Callel forced himself upright, ripping free several blinking conduits. "I saved your world. I fought your enemies." Virain's answer was colder than void steel. "And in doing so, you revealed a power rivaling the Emperor himself. Power without sanction or sacred context. Already the common folk whisper of you as a savior. Do you comprehend the peril in that? Faith, absolute and unquestioned in the Emperor, is the foundation upon which the Imperium endures." Callel met the mask with unwavering gaze. "Where I come from, people may choose what to believe. Then where you come from is already doomed," Virain said flatly. "Here, only unity of purpose stands between humanity and annihilation. One faith, one ruler. Anything less invites extinction." The chamber doors opened, and Governor Tullius entered, his features etched with exhaustion. "Inquisitor, the High Lords have rendered judgment concerning our visitor." Virain turned sharply, surprise evident in the tilt of her stance, though her masked face betrayed nothing. "So soon? Without proper examination or interrogation?" "The situation is without precedent," Tullius replied, "and so is the decision. The being known as Callel is to be conveyed to Terra at once. The Emperor himself will judge his purpose." A shockwave of silence rippled through the room. For 10,000 years the Emperor, immured upon the Golden Throne, had spoken only in fragments, tarot visions and cryptic dreams to his most devout servants. Direct judgment was virtually legend, bordering on myth. "Impossible," Virain breathed. "The journey alone requires months. The corruption within him will fester." "Special dispensation has been granted," Tullius continued. "A warp jump straight to the Sol system under Grey Knight escort to contain any taint during transit." Callel looked from one face to the next, absorbing little of the deeper implications, yet sensing the gravity. "This Emperor, he leads your Imperium?" The simple question drew horrified stillness. To even frame the Emperor as a mere leader brushed perilously close to heresy. He was the Imperium's cornerstone, its light and its immortal soul. "The Emperor is mankind," Virain said at last, her voice carrying the weight of creed. "He is our past and our destiny, the shield that holds back the void's endless dark and the nightmares of the warp. 10,000 years ago, he gave up his mortal body to preserve humanity. He died," Tullius added gravely, "felled by the treachery of his own son. Yet his divine mind endures, fused to the Golden Throne that sustains the remnants of his physical shell. From there, he projects the Astronomicon, the psychic beacon that makes warp travel possible. Without it, humanity would be cut off, isolated, splintered, doomed." Callel listened, concern deepening. "And this Emperor wishes to see me?" "Not see," Virain corrected sharply. "Judge, there is a difference." The journey to Terra began under the highest security imaginable. The Inquisition's specialized craft tore through the warp at unnatural velocity, guided by master navigators whose gifts bordered on prophecy. Grey Knights, those legendary space marines bred and armed to confront the demonic, kept relentless watch outside Callel's chamber, their silvered armor a constant reminder of the peril he represented. From the narrow viewport, he observed the unreality beyond, the warp's writhing geometries and impossible colors. a storm of raw thought and nightmare. To him, it felt less like madness and more like a chaotic cousin to the phantom zone of his own universe. A dimensional overlay, both familiar and infinitely more violent. Yet the corruption within him continued its silent advance. From the wounds carved by the demon's axe, black veins crept outward beneath his skin like ink spreading through water. Apothecaries and tech priests labored without rest, applying sacred unguents and machine prayers. But Kryptonian biology defied their arts. Their treatments were crude guesses at best, delaying what none could yet cure. On the 7th day of the warp voyage, Callel received an unexpected visitor. A Grey Knight's chaplain, immense in baroque silvered armor and masked by a skull-faced helm. "Your corruption advances," the chaplain observed, his words layered with a low psychic resonance. "Yet, you resist its influence more effectively than any mortal I have known." Callel flinched as a tech priest pressed a poultice of consecrated herbs to his wound. "In my world," he said, "I've endured many forms of corruption. Mind control, parasitic infestations, poisons tailored to my biology. This feels different." The chaplain inclined his head. "Chaos is neither merely physical nor mental. It is spiritual. It seeks to unmake the essence of what you are." Callel studied the helm's blank visage. "And what do you believe I am?" For a long moment, there was only the hum of the ship's engines. "That is not mine to declare," the chaplain said at last. "Only the Emperor may judge your true nature. But I note this. You wield strength akin to the Primarchs of old, yet bear none of their warp-born taint. You hold a moral resolve that would shame many Imperial saints, yet you follow no creed we know. You are an impossibility, a living contradiction." Callel exhaled slowly. "Where I come from, I'm not unique. Others possess powers. Some serve, some exploit, some destroy." The chaplain's next question cut like a blade. "And who decides which path is righteous?" Callel faltered. "I suppose each of us does, guided by conscience." The chaplain's voice hardened. "And therein lies the fatal weakness of your reality. The moral law cannot be left to private whim," the chaplain declared, his voice a deep, resonant judgment. "Not in a galaxy where the gods of excess, murder, pestilence, and false hope ceaselessly poison mortal minds. Only the Emperor's vision offers a path secure against their corruption." Before Callel could frame an answer, sirens shrieked through the ship's decks. Tech priests snapped shut their reliquary tools and departed at a near run. The chaplain tilted his skull-helmed head, receiving silent updates through the vox hidden in his armor. "We are under attack," he said evenly. "A fleet of unknown origin has intercepted us despite the secrecy of our course. Our navigator reports disturbances in the warp. The mission is compromised." Callel swung his legs from the Medicae bed, ignoring the fiery ache of his wounds. "Let me help." The chaplain regarded him for a long breath. "You are unfit for combat and remain under inquisitorial custody until you stand before the Emperor." "People are dying while we speak," Callel replied, his words echoing those he had once spoken to Inquisitor Virain. "I hear them. If you will not release me to fight, then restrain me more effectively." The chaplain's armored brow inclined slightly, a gesture of grim concession. "Follow me, but understand this. Any attempt at escape will be judged proof of hostile intent." Together they moved into the ship's frantic arteries, where crewmen sprinted toward battle stations and medici teams braced for the wounded soon to come. The ship quaked under relentless impact, as enemy fire slammed against its weakening void shields. On the bridge, disciplined urgency reigned amid flashing runes and shouted data. Tactical hololiths showed their vessel encircled by craft of wholly unfamiliar design, neither imperial nor any known Xenos pattern. These intruders struck with weapons that flickered in and out of reality, phasing past conventional defenses as if physical law itself could not touch them. "Status report," the chaplain commanded. The captain, a scarred veteran of innumerable void battles, spoke without lifting his gaze from the displays. "Void shields at 30% and dropping. Our weapons cannot track their phase-shifting signatures. No hails received. 3 boarding craft have latched onto the lower decks. Grey Knight Squad Purgator is engaging." The chaplain's eyes narrowed behind his skull-faced helm. "Their configuration defies classification. Neither Chaos nor any Xenos strain catalogued." Callel leaned closer to the shimmering projections, a slow dread tightening his chest. "I know those ships," he murmured. "Not these attackers exactly, but the technology. Kryptonian. From my dead world. Altered, corrupted." The bridge fell silent, every eye turning toward him. The captain's jaw hardened. "You are certain?" "Certain of the design," Callel replied. "The drive signatures. The hull geometry, they're Kryptonian in origin." From the shadowed rear of the command deck, Inquisitor Virine stepped forward, her presence cutting the silence. "Explain, quickly." Callel's face darkened. "Krypton was destroyed. I was sent away as an infant, the sole survivor. But before its end, there were colonies, outposts, exploration fleets." He trailed off, unease sharpening each word. "If some of them crossed into this reality as I did, centuries or even millennia before me, they could have established a hidden presence," Virine concluded. "Unknown to the Imperium." "Unknown," the captain said darkly. "Or deliberately concealed." His words were cut short as the bridge heaved under a thunderous impact. Warning runes flared crimson across the consoles while tech priests chanted Binharic litanies to keep vital systems alive. "Lower decks breached," a senior officer reported. "Grey Knights engaged with boarding parties. Hostiles are humanoid, heavily augmented. They are moving toward the prisoners' quarters." Callel's eyes widened. "They are looking for me. They must have sensed my presence." The chaplain's gauntlet closed on the hilt of his force sword. "Then they will be thwarted. You remain under Imperial custody." Another savage shudder tore through the ship. Lights sputtered out and emergency crimson lumens bathed the bridge in blood-red glow. When illumination steadied, a new presence stood among them, having passed every layer of security as though they did not exist. The intruder's silhouette mirrored Callel's broad, commanding frame, yet bore the marks of profane transformation. Where Callel embodied unblemished strength, this figure was a grotesque synthesis of Kryptonian flesh and ruthless machinery. Segments of living metal pulsed with eerie power beneath skin of impossible resilience. Across its chest blazed a warped mockery of Callel's own crest, the lines sharpened into angular cruelty. The creature's voice emerged as an uncanny harmony of man and machine. "Last son of Krypton," it said, each syllable vibrating with mechanical undertone. "We have sought you across realities." Grey Knights and shipboard security closed in, weapons leveled with unwavering precision. The chaplain advanced, force sword alive with a psychic hum. "Identify yourself, abomination," he commanded, voice a steel-edged litany. "By what right do you trespass upon a vessel of the Holy Inquisition?" The intruder's luminous eyes never left Callel. "I am Connell, once of the House of El, now of the Collectorate," it declared, its blended organic-synthetic voice resonant and cold. "We have come to integrate the last pure Kryptonian genetic template." Callel's face tightened in shock. "That's impossible. Krypton was destroyed. The bloodlines ended." Connell tilted his head slightly. "In your reality, perhaps. In ours, a fragment endured, adapted, evolved. Millennia ago, we unlocked the principle of dimensional transit. We have forged an empire across countless realities. This one, with its unstable dimensional boundaries and abundant resources, is merely the newest target for integration." Inquisitor Virine stepped forward, the aquila of her staff glowing like a captured sun. "No empire exists within Imperial space without our knowledge. The Emperor's dominion is absolute." Only then did Connell shift his attention to the humans. Augmented eyes flickered as they measured her with clinical calm. "Your Emperor is known to us," he said, as if reciting a data entry. "A formidable psychic presence, yes. But in the end, merely another consciousness awaiting integration. His vast knowledge will serve the Collectorate's eternal expansion." Connell's cold declaration that the Emperor's very genes would strengthen their biological designs drew audible gasps from the bridge crew. The Grey Knights reacted as a single, silver-armored phalanx, force weapons flashing with sanctified power meant to scour demons from existence. They struck from every side, blades and halberds humming with psychic wrath. Connell moved at near-human speed, but with a precision utterly mechanical. Each step and counter was exact, stripped of the instinctive grace Callel embodied. Force weapons that could rend warp-spawned horrors glanced harmlessly off his hybrid Kryptonian flesh. When blows found the metallic nodes embedded in his body, brief showers of sparks erupted, yet internal repair routines instantly corrected the damage. "Inadequate," Connell said flatly, catching a descending force halberd in one hand and snapping its adamantium shaft as if it were brittle wood. "Your weapons were forged for creatures of the warp. I am matter refined and perfected." With chilling efficiency, he neutralized the Grey Knights one after another, not killing, Callel realized, but striking with perfectly measured force to cripple their ability to fight. A warrior society where ruthless efficiency eclipsed all else. The thought chilled Callel, revealing a nightmare reflection of what his own people might have become on a darker path. Despite the agony of his wounds, he hurled himself at the corrupted kinsmen. Their collision was titanic, shaking the bridge to its core and shattering consoles in a storm of sparks and metal. Where the Grey Knights had faltered one by one, Callel met Connell's every strike with equal might. Sparks and fragments of shattered consoles rained as their blows shook the ruined bridge. "You're holding back," Connell observed coolly while they grappled, cybernetic strength locking with Kryptonian muscle. "Restraining your force to spare these humans. Inefficient, irrational." "It's called compassion," Callel grunted, driving back against the augmented power. "Something our house once held above all else." Connell's face remained an impassive mask. "Compassion is evolutionary baggage. We extracted what utility it offered and discarded the rest. The Collectorate prizes optimization, not sentiment." They broke apart, circling amid wreckage while the ship's crew and surviving Grey Knights formed a tense perimeter. Weapons raised but helpless to intervene against combatants who moved faster than targeting sensors could track. "Your wounds are not merely physical," Connell remarked, his enhanced vision analyzing Callel's black-veined chest. "Chaos corruption. Intriguing? We have seen analogous anomalies across other dimensions. Such phenomena can be contained, studied, even repurposed." Callel felt the taint stir within his injuries, as if roused by the words. "Nothing about chaos can be used," he snapped. "It is pure evil." "Evil," Connell replied, tilting his head with mechanical precision, "is a subjective moral fiction. The Collectorate recognizes only utility or its absence. The corruption can be excised and your genetic template refined. Join us willingly, and the transition will be optimized for comfort." Callel's eyes hardened. "And if I refuse?" "Integration will proceed regardless," Connell said without a flicker of emotion. "But your consciousness will endure under suboptimal parameters." The cybernetic Kryptonian's voice stayed flat, devoid of even simulated feeling. "The Collectorate requires your uncorrupted genetic sequence to correct drift within our population. Your consent is preferable, but not required." Callel drew breath to reply. Then a new force stirred on the bridge. The chaplain, struck down earlier, rose from the deck with startling fluidity that defied the weight of his ornate armor. When he spoke, his single word rang through the ship's superstructure like a living command. "Enough." The sound held such latent might that both Kryptonians turned as one. "The Emperor has marked this one for judgment," the chaplain continued, voice deep with layered resonance. "None shall interfere." From behind the black sockets of the skull-faced helm, golden brilliance flared, and psychic fire rippled across his armor until it outlined a vast and radiant form. Connell's augmented gaze flickered with rapid calculations. "Possession by warp entity," he noted coolly. "Probability high. Possibly the consciousness identifying as the Emperor. Threat level significant." The chaplain lifted one gauntleted hand, now sheathed in incandescent gold. "You trespass not only in the Emperor's domain, abomination," he intoned, but under his direct gaze. "Begone." A torrent of pure psychic force exploded outward. A sun-bright wave that made the bridge itself tremble. Connell's hybrid systems convulsed under the onslaught. Metal screamed and circuits sparked, cascading failures racing through his augmented body as the Emperor's will swept over him. For the first time, Connell's perfect mask cracked, showing a flicker of unease. "Unanticipated psychic capability," he said, his voice warping as systems fought to recalibrate. "Tactical withdrawal advised." In a blur of motion, he burst through the bridge bulkheads, retreating toward his boarding craft with blinding speed. The golden brilliance faded from the chaplain's eyes, and he dropped to his knees. Steam hissing from overheated armor seals. "The Emperor protects," he whispered, before collapsing into unconsciousness. Inquisitor Virine stared at the falling gray night, raw awe softening her usually cold features. "A miracle," she breathed. "Direct intervention. I have never witnessed such a thing in all my years of service." Callel stepped forward to assist, but Imperial Medici teams gently held him back, their faces a tense mixture of reverence and fear as they ministered to the warrior who had, for a moment, borne the Emperor's presence. Tactical officers soon reported that the enemy craft were disengaging, vanishing not through any known warp route, but into a shimmering dimensional rift. The immediate threat had passed, yet the shadow of it remained. "They will return," Callel said with quiet certainty. "The Collectorate does not abandon its goals. If they share the Kryptonian persistence I knew, they are methodical, relentless." Virine turned toward him, her earlier sharpness tempered by the weight of what she had witnessed. "Then it is all the more vital that you reach Terra. The Emperor himself has revealed his will for you. Such direct intervention has not been recorded in centuries. The remainder of the voyage unfolded without further incident. But an unspoken tension lingered over every soul aboard. Repair crews labored without pause to mend the wounds the battle had carved into the ship's hull. Medici teams moved with quiet efficiency, treating the injured, while the honored dead were given their solemn rites. From the fallen Grey Knights, Gene Seed was carefully reclaimed for return to their chapter. Callel spent the long hours in meditation, marshaling his immense will to contain the chaos corruption that still crept insidiously through his body. The gash no longer bled, yet black veins radiating from it throbbed with malevolent energy, sending him sudden, jarring visions of carnage. Phantasms so vivid, they threatened to merge with his own thoughts. As the vessel neared the Sol system, he was granted a view of Terra through the ship's vast ocular arrays. The cradle of mankind was nothing like the Earth he had once known. His adopted homeworld had been a blue jewel adrift in tranquil darkness. This Terra was a scarred, smoke-wreathed colossus, wrapped in an awe-inspiring lattice of orbital fortresses, defense stations, and vast void ships. The sheer magnitude of humanity's presence exceeded anything Callel had encountered across the stars. At its heart loomed the Imperial Palace, a continent-spanning citadel of impossible scale and grandeur, its tallest spires piercing low orbit like titanic spears. Even across the void, Callel's heightened senses felt the psychic radiance pouring from it, an unyielding golden luminescence that seemed to pierce the very fabric of reality itself. Their craft eased into berth at a high-orbit station reserved solely for the Inquisition's most secretive missions. From the orbital station, a fortress-like transport bore Callel, Inquisitor Virain, and a squad of Grey Knights down through Terra's atmosphere. They plunged through layer upon layer of security, each barrier more formidable than the last, until at last they reached the outer precincts of the Imperial Palace itself. What followed humbled even Callel, who had walked the wonders of many worlds. They advanced along colossal avenues lined with statues of space marines hundreds of feet high, stone giants frozen in eternal vigilance. They passed cathedral halls where thousands of pilgrims lay prostrate before relics of long-dead imperial saints, and fortress battlements where Titan war engines loomed, their dormant weapons thrumming with restrained power. At every checkpoint, Inquisitor Virain produced credentials of escalating rarity. Ancient sigils were scrutinized, genetic samples taken and compared, psychic examinations pressed deep into thought and motive. At last they arrived before a vast adamantium portal, its surface carved with symbols so alien to mortal comprehension that looking upon them caused the eyes to ache and swim. Before this gate stood the Adeptus Custodes, the Emperor's own guardians, encased in golden armor that radiated an inner light, the perfection of a technology even the Adeptus Mechanicus could scarcely fathom. One among them, the Shield Captain, stepped forward and spoke in a voice of absolute command. The anomaly will proceed alone from here. Virain advanced a step, her tone edged with urgency. With respect, Shield Captain. The prisoner is a potential threat of the highest magnitude. Protocol dictates. Protocols are superseded by direct command. The custodian interrupted, his words brooking no appeal. He will proceed alone, or he will not proceed at all, the Shield Captain pronounced, his voice final as a closing gate. Even the Grey Knights, supreme warriors of the Imperium, bowed to that authority. Within the Emperor's own palace, none dared contest the custodes. Callel glanced toward Inquisitor Virain. Behind her mask, she was unreadable, but after a long beat, she inclined her head once. "The Emperor protects," she said simply. At her gesture, the colossal doors parted with an impossible hush, belying their titanic mass. Beyond stretched a corridor that seemed endless, its length flanked by more custodes as still and perfect as carved idols. Guardian spears held in flawless salute. Drawing a steady breath, Callel stepped forward alone. The doors sealed behind him with the same unnatural quiet, severing every tie to the world outside. He walked on and on through a hall where distance defied meaning, as if the very fabric of space folded upon itself. The air grew dense with psychic weight, pressing on his mind like the crushing depths of an abyss. Each step carried him deeper into a presence that felt at once infinite and intimately aware. At last, the passage widened into a chamber so vast, its limits were swallowed in shadow and immeasurable distance. At its heart towered the golden throne, a construct of technology and psychic architecture beyond mortal comprehension. Upon it rested what remained of the Emperor of mankind, his corporeal form desiccated to a sacred husk after 10 millennia of inconceivable sacrifice. Power poured from the golden throne in waves so vast that Callel's own legendary strength felt like a flicker beside a star. Encircling the dais stood ranks of custodes in silent formation, while tech priests of the Mechanicus ministered to the colossal life support engines sustaining the Emperor's withered frame. At precise intervals, the silent sisters of the anathema Psychana kept vigil, their null auras carving pockets of psychic stillness within the boundless sea of the Emperor's might. Drawn by an instinct he could not name, Callel advanced until the sheer weight of an infinite awareness fixed upon him. No voice reached his ears, yet meaning surged directly into his mind, thought to thought, deeper than language. Last son of Krypton, guardian of a dead reality, I have awaited your coming with great interest. Callel found no words, but his thoughts shaped a reply the Emperor received without barrier. You know what I am. I know all that walks the materium and much that stirs beyond. Your arrival was foreseen, though its purpose remained veiled, until now. In an instant, visions cascaded through Callel's consciousness. The fiery death of Krypton, his infant escape to Earth, a life as Clark Kent and as Superman, battles fought to shield his adopted home. Then stranger images, realities that never were, dark variations where his strength had turned to tyranny, where worlds burned under his rule. Why am I here, in this place and moment? He asked and thought. Causality is rarely so simple, the Emperor's vast presence replied, each concept unfolding like light across eternity. Perhaps you were summoned here by the same hidden currents that draw all things. The Emperor's voice resonated inside Callel's skull, a tide of thought vast as oceans. Perhaps your presence serves a purpose in the endless game against the ruinous powers. Or perhaps it is coincidence, though I have long since ceased to believe in such a thing. Beneath the sheer magnitude of that psychic communication lurked an unfathomable fatigue, the weariness of a being who had borne 10 millennia of ceaseless siege, holding humanity back from extinction by his own sacrifice. Unbidden, the question formed in Callel's mind. Are you truly a god? For an instant, the Emperor's answer felt like a faint echo of amusement. I am what humanity required me to become. Once a man, now something more, and something less. Godhood is perspective. In your world, Cal, were you not venerated by some even as you denied divinity? The comparison struck close. Cal had always rejected any cult of personality around Superman, insisting he was simply doing what anyone with his abilities should do. Yet he could not deny that in certain places, people had knelt before him with reverence, treating him as a savior. I never sought worship, his thoughts replied, only to help. And therein lies the paradox that draws my attention, the Emperor's presence intoned. Your might equals that of my Primarchs, yet you bear no touch of the warp. Your moral certainty mirrors my most hallowed saints, yet you follow no imperial creed. You are an impossibility in a universe that cannot abide contradictions. Beneath that scrutiny, the black veins of chaos in Callel's wounds pulsed, answering the gaze like a living thing. The black veins had crept inward until they pulsed at Callel's heart. Each beat a reminder that his incorruptible compass was being drawn toward the abyss. You are wounded by forces you do not yet comprehend. Last sun, the Emperor's thought thundered. The ruinous powers seek to claim you, as they seek to claim all who matter. They would twist you into their champion, a parody of everything you stand for. Can you heal me? Callel's unspoken plea echoed. I can, the Emperor replied, his presence sinking deeper into Callel's being, an inexorable tide. But there is always a cost. Callel felt his entire life spread open, every act and impulse weighed like grains on a scale. You stand at a crossroads, Callel. 3 paths lie before you. Images unfolded in his mind, so vivid they eclipsed the chamber around him. First, the Emperor's concept flowed. I can strip the corruption from you and return you to your own reality. This place will fade from your memory like a dream, and you will go on as the guardian of your Earth. But the vision darkened, showing a shadowy echo of his homeworld. Yet know this: your reality, like all realities, harbors its own face of chaos. Without the knowledge gained here, you may stand unprepared when that darkness rises. The vision shifted again, presenting another future. Second, I can heal you and allow you to remain here as a free agent. Your power would stand as a bulwark against both chaos and the Kryptonian Collectorate that hunts you. But your very existence outside the imperial hierarchy would fracture the delicate balance of faith and authority upon which mankind's survival hangs. The Emperor's thought voice continued, rolling through Callel's mind like a tolling bell. Civil wars would bloom in your name. Cults would claim your patronage. Your intentions would be drowned beneath the tide of human belief. The final vision unfolded, grandest and most terrible. Third, I can remake you as my servant. Your power sanctified, your purpose bound to the Imperium's survival. You would stand as a living saint, a symbol of imperial might, whose very presence strengthens mankind's faith. Your freedom curtailed, your identity subsumed into the narrative of the Imperium. But your capacity to save lives magnified 1,000-fold. The visions dissolved, leaving Callel again in the immeasurable chamber before the Golden Throne. The corruption in his wounds throbbed harder, as though aware its window was closing. There must be another way, his thoughts whispered. Some compromise preserving both my autonomy and this reality's stability. The luxury of perfect solutions died with old Earth. Cal, the Emperor's mind replied, heavy as a tombstone. In this universe, all choices carry a blood price. All victories are partial, all defeats absolute. Callel weighed each path, returned to his reality where he was still needed, but stripped of the knowledge to fight chaos when it rose. Remain free here, a bulwark against darkness, yet risk becoming the spark of civil war and fervent cults. Or surrender freedom entirely to become a sanctified weapon of the Imperium itself. Or he could surrender his autonomy entirely, become an instrument of the Emperor's vision, a weapon forged for an Imperium whose methods so often ran counter to everything he had sworn to uphold. None of the paths were clean. All demanded sacrifice. As he wrestled with the decision, Callel became aware of something else within the vast psychic projection. No separate voice, but a subtler current within the whole. It was a lingering echo of the man the Emperor had once been before his internment upon the Golden Throne. That remnant regarded Callel with something resembling compassion, an emotion almost alien within the pitiless calculus of the 41st millennium. This choice shapes not only your destiny, Callel, but the course of multiple realities. It impressed upon him. The Collectorate will never end its pursuit. Chaos will not relinquish its claim. My Imperium cannot endure an unaligned power of your magnitude. There are no innocent choices left to you. In that instant, clarity struck Callel like cold light. He felt, for the first time, the immensity of the burden the Emperor had borne for 10 millennia. The impossible dilemmas, the compromises, the sacrifices of principle for the sake of survival. He had always condemned such moral concessions from the vantage of a gentler world. If I choose to serve, his thought formed slowly. What assurance do I have my power will not be twisted, used for atrocities in the name of imperial security? Assurances belong to realities with the luxury of certainty. Last son, came the Emperor's reply. I can offer only this. My vision for humankind has ever been one of ascent, not the mere scraping by of survival. The harsh cruelties of the Imperium are shackles I would gladly strike away if the fates allowed. Perhaps, with your strength bound to mine, such renewal may one day break through the iron of necessity. It was not the solace Cal yearned for, yet every syllable rang with austere truth. The Emperor promised no gilded mercy, no effortless absolution. For the first time since his arrival in this brutal cosmos, Callel grasped the chasm between it and the world of his birth. His own Earth had been a place where a single heroic soul might bend history, where compromise of conscience was seldom demanded, where light, given time, unfailingly conquered shadow. This reality offered none of those gentle assurances. Here, even the noblest designs could pave the road to damnation. Here, triumph was measured not by lives preserved, but by the bare continuation of humanity against powers bent on utter extinction. Could he pass judgment on those waging such a war? Could he hold fast to moral clarity when the very scale of the threat rendered ordinary ethics not only naive, but lethal? The corruption surged again, stabbing pain through his frame. The moments left were few. All choice distilled to the timeless question that had steered him across the worlds and incarnations: how to serve life itself. I choose the third path, he finally conveyed, not from allegiance to every creed of the Imperium, but because within its vast machinery, he might achieve the greatest good. The Emperor's presence swelled until it filled the immense hall, a tide of radiant gold that lanced straight into Callel's core. So be it. Canal, Louisiana, son of Krypton, rise and serve as the Emperor's shield. Kel bent the knee before the gleaming throne, head lowered, as psychic might closed around him like a living sun. Chaos taint burned away in purifying flame that scorched not only muscle and bone, but the essence of his soul, agony deeper than anything he had ever endured. Yet no cry escaped him. As the corruption bled from his being, something new took root. Not the yoke of domination, but a fierce communion, a purpose that ran beside the Emperor's own without erasing the self. His strength remained his, yet now it stood consecrated and acknowledged within the vast creed of the Imperium. When at last he rose, transformation was complete. His battle-ripped garb had become a war relic. Blue hardened into the dark cobalt of space marine plate. Red deepened to the solemn crimson of the Adeptus Custodes. The emblem on his chest endured, now woven into the imperial aquila, that double-headed eagle which proclaims the Imperium of man. You are now my shield against the darkness, Callel. No Primarch, no Space Marine, but something apart. The Collectorate will hunt. Chaos will conspire. In my name, you will oppose them. I will not kill needlessly, Callel vowed, staking his own code even while embracing the charge. Where mercy is possible, I will grant it. Above all, I will defend the innocent, as is right. Mankind hungers not only for protection, but for a spark to follow. You shall serve as both bastion and beacon. With that final decree, the Emperor's immediate presence ebbed, leaving behind a luminous filament that bound Kal-El's mind to the master of mankind. The vast chamber gradually reverted to stillness. The custodes and tech priests resumed their wordless watch, as if nothing had stirred. From the shadows stepped the shield captain, bowing his head in subtle homage to Kal-El's newly anointed station. You will be escorted to the Sanctorum Imperialis, he intoned, for formal investiture and the learning of your charge. The audience was ended. Following the golden-armored sentinel from the throne hall, Kell felt the gravity of choice descend fully upon him. He had relinquished the chance to reclaim his native reality, pledging himself to an Imperium whose harsh methods he could never wholly sanction, gambling that he might yet steer it toward a gentler destiny. Along the cavernous, Baroque passageways of the Imperial Palace, his eyes caught a sudden flash. His own likeness mirrored in a plate of burnished adamantium. Upon his chest, the emblem of Krypton gleamed, now fused within the Imperial Aquila. A living emblem of compromise, imperfect, yet perhaps inevitable. Beyond those fortress walls of ceramite and void shield, beyond the orbital bulwarks and ceaseless patrols, the starfields of the galaxy stretched without end, patient and waiting. Across the void, the forces of chaos stirred, their fathomless hungers quickening at the birth of a new peace upon the endless board. The Kryptonian Collectorate computed and schemed, parsing probabilities and charting strategies for another bid to seize the final, untainted genetic pattern of their fading race. And on Terra itself, the Emperor observed through eyes of molten gold as his newest champion readied to meet every foe. One last son of a dead world now chained to the perilous destiny of humanity's embattled Imperium. In the grim darkness of the far future, where there is only war, a fragile spark of light ignited. Whether it would become true deliverance, or merely another glorious martyrdom upon the altar of survival, none could yet discern. Within the Sanctorum Imperialis, that vault of supreme heroes and forbidden truths, Kell of Krypton bent the knee again, while the High Lords of Terra declared his elevation before throngs beyond counting. "Behold," rang the master of the administratum, his words magnified to reach the vast processional. "The Emperor's shield, sanctified son of Terra, defender of all mankind." A tidal roar of devotion answered, the massed faith of billions feeding the Emperor's undying radiance across the Imperium's farthest reaches. Yet in the black gulfs between galaxies, colossal and spiteful entities turned their gaze toward this singular consecration, scenting both hazard and advantage in the sanctified Kryptonian. The great game endured, the eternal war ground on. And Callel, once the bright herald of a gentler cosmos, now stood among the somber guardians of mankind's twilight dominion, carrying the emblem of hope into a universe that had all but forgotten what the word once meant.